What's up guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I do my breakdowns and my build-ups. So let's jump straight into a project that I just made. Let's go. Before we start, don't forget to join my Discord server. I have made a server where I want to bring together producers and artists alike, a place where we can share feedback on our tracks, share music production tips, and generally just have a really cool place to hang out talking about music. So check it out in the link in the description. Okay, so I have made this track here. As you can see, I have done a little bit of house cleaning. So I've made some time markers so you can see each section of my song. So intro, build up, drop one, part B, breakdown, build up, drop two, part B, and then an outro. So I'm just gonna play the build up and into the drop so you can get an idea of what it sounds like. A really awesome track in my opinion, one of my favorite. Okay, so if we jump straight into what's happening, so most of my times I tend to do my breakdowns and build-ups this way, but of course it changes from project to project. But what I like to do, if we start with the build-up, I like to include maybe like my lead melody from the drop in my build-up. In this case, it's this like organ melody that's going on here. And what you could do is that you could have like a low pass filter, or you can even have like a volume automation going on. I have one here, but I actually don't use it for the build-up because it just was really great as is. But you could do that to introduce it like just gradually. Then I have like this synth pad thing. That's also like a stutter thing. It's also going on in the drop. So basically I'm also introducing that in the build-up. I'm actually also introducing it a little bit before the build-up, just to create some tension. Then if we go down, then I actually added like the classic high string in a lot of house tracks. This one. Some people think it's a little bit cheesy to use it. I don't use it all the time, but sometimes I use it, and it's just really great at creating like this really like tension that something is happening. So it's just building upwards towards the drop. So like listen to this. And then if I just remove it. Like it's okay, but it's just lacking a little bit of like that extra energy, and that's how this high string can do it. So all of the yellow elements are my instruments, synths, organ and stuff. If you go down, the red is my bass. So one cool way of doing something nice to your build-ups and make them a little bit more like impactful is that you can introduce like the bass line in the build-up. What I actually did is that I had a bass riff that was more like this, and then it repeats. This was like for my drop one, but now we're going into drop two, and I wanted to change it a little bit, so I added some extra notes. So let me just open the MIDI pattern so you can see I added a little bit extra stuff happening up here. And then I had like this other thing here where I'm adding a little bit extra here. So for the like the last part of the bar. And then of course with a lot of swing, so it's more like groovy and stuff. So I really encourage you to try to take some elements that you have in your drop, maybe like for the first drop, and then try to change them a little bit just to make some variations so everything doesn't sound like the same. So this extra like modulated bass riff is actually doing something cool here in the drop 2. So it's a different bass riff than drop 1 here. And then I'm actually doing some automation down here. So this is like a plugin from Arturia. And basically what this what this automation is doing is that it's just open up the filter. So if you take a listen. Just really like subtle, but it just makes like the sound open up a little bit more towards the drop, and then it just closes. And I think that's just really impactful. So what I'm actually doing a lot is that I'm using automations a lot when I'm doing my build-ups to change the sound. So that could be to make stuff sound a little bit more thin. So that could be to use like a high pass filter. I'm actually doing it for the kick drum. So I have my kick drum here, really thumpy. Then I added a high pass filter. So we just have like the top of the click, but it's just driving some of that like rhythm towards the drop. And then I'm actually doing a little bit of volume automation, so it's quieter and then slowly getting louder. And then you can hear like it's almost disappearing here. Let's play the build-up. So you can just hear like that click of the kick drum is just going through the mix, and it just gets your head bobbing, and you know like something is happening, it's coming. Then I added like a ride loop here, which I didn't use in like the breakdown section here going into the build-up. So I have this one. And that's also a really great way of doing like something transition-wise, is that you use some elements that are not used before in the previous section. So it just grabs the listener's attention that something else is happening, that there is a change going on. So you can see like I actually didn't include like these top loops and these hi-hats here in the build-up, but it was just purposeful to just do something else, just make a change. If we go down, I'm just jumping a little bit in between, but all of the blue stuff here are my drums. I route all of my drums to a drum bus in FL Studio. So basically just means that I'm just summing all of my drums into one channel, because then I can do a lot of compression, EQ, but I can also do some creative effects like adding a low pass filter. So this is basically what's happening here. So I'm low passing the ride loop. So you can also hear like that the ride loop is slowly disappearing because of the low pass filter. And that's also a great way for this build-up, is that it just slowly makes everything a little bit more thin. And that's also because on the master bus, if you've seen any of my previous video, you know that I use this trick all the time, is that I just add like a gain plugin on my master bus and just decrease the gain, the volume basically of the master bus just before the drop. So that's what happens up here. And then I added like a multi-effects plugin. It's called In the Smile from Data Life. And basically it's just one knob where you can it just adds reverb, delay, filtering and stuff in one knob. And I just automate that knob. And it basically just adds, of course, all of these effects. So if you have a listen. So it just adds all of these creative effects and makes the sound like a little bit more washed out, a little bit more like thin. And it just makes the drop hits a little bit harder, in my opinion. It just builds tension towards that drop. And then the last automation going on my master bus is a plugin called Stereo from Kilohertz. And basically it's just reducing the width of the stereo of the master volume. And it just makes my sound sound closer to mono just before the drop, and then just going back to like zero, or what you could call like doesn't affect it. So this is basically here where the plugin doesn't affect the signal, and here in this area it just gradually decreases the stereo spread of the sound. So you can look here and see here. And then it goes back into normal, not changing the stereo field. And I think it's a really great trick to just create again this tension and build up towards your drop. And then of course, like I'm utilizing the trick of having silence before my drop. So I'm basically not almost silence, but I'm removing a lot of stuff before the drop. So you can see I'm removing the organ here, also some of the synth pad, this high string thing as well, also the kick drum, the ride loop, and actually also a lot of the SFX stuff here, the rises and the snare buildups. And it's just to make play with the listener's attention, because then everything just sounds like it stops almost, and then it just hits. So basically kind of like sucks you in, and then it just smacks with the drop. So that's also a really great tip to do that. So just try to use some silence just before the drop. You could also like almost remove everything and just almost have completely silence, and then it just hits. It's also a great trick to do that. But for this track, I wanted to have like that vocal chop thing that's going on here, and also like the bass line going on like just before the drop. But that's like basically how I will do my build-ups. Then I know like a lot of people will be like, oh, you have to do your own like SFX sounds and your build-ups with the snare build-ups and rises, but I'm really lazy, so most of the times I don't do it. I just pull in like a sample from Splice. So what's happening down here is that I have like a different amount of stuff. So I have like this cool riser from a UK Garage pack on Splice. Just like this laser sound. Then I have like a low pass snare build. And then pulling those out just before the drop. And then like a white noise riser. I just use a lot of like risers and these snare builds and like laser risers almost, I think I will call these, just to like add a little bit more extra build to the build-up. But like that's basically it, how I will do it. So if I were to like sum up this section, I will just take again the lead melody of the drop, introduce it in the build-up, adding a little bit of modulation, like automating the volume, the filter cutoff. It could also be like some chorus effect, phaser effect, adding some delays and stuff. So it just changes a little bit, and then it hits you here with the melody. But that's because you're building towards the drop. And I think that's why it works, because then the listener knows, okay, this melody is like the main element, it's being introduced, and then it hits. Yeah, and then again play with adding variations to main elements that you're using, adding a little bit of extra notes, like as I did with this bass riff. So it could also be if you had like a piano loop playing here, just adding like extra notes that just goes up in octave just to build tension. So there are like many ways to do this. But basically what you need to think about is that you need to make sure that there is some change happening, so the listener knows that, okay, this is actually a build-up. So it's building towards something. So if I just had like everything just going as is, like just extending all of these drums from the breakdown section into the build-up without adding like extra stuff, I think this drop will not sound that good. It will just hit you, and yeah, you don't have like this expectation, this tension that's going on in the build-up. So my tip is actually use a lot of automation stuff if you can, if you want to, and just try to play around with the existing elements that you have in the drop and try to manipulate them. So yeah, that's it for like the build-up section. If I were to talk a little bit about my breakdowns, I really like to include, for me at least, I like to have mellow elements like pianos, synth pads, small percussion elements, and also like a lot of like texture loops. So I have like these like field recordings that I did on Mallorca myself. You can get this sample pack if you want to on my web shop. The link is in the description. But I really like to use field recordings in my tracks, especially in breakdown sections, because they just add a sense of like organic vibes and a little bit more like texture. I also add like this crackling noise. And then of course like adding some downlifters. And some like cymbal sweeps here. So if I just play like the section going from drop 1 to the breakdown, it's this. So my breakdown, of course, is, as it says, it's a breakdown, so you need to break stuff down. So I just tend to remove a lot of my drums. I tend to remove the bass entirely, adding some of these like mellow elements like the piano and the synth pads, which I might not be using in the drop, just to make some contrast and some change. And then slowly building it upwards towards the build-up and then the drop. So it's more like trying to tell a story. Like now it's like more relaxed, and then I'm slowly building more stuff, and then it just goes into the build-up, like that big finale, and then hits with the drop here. So how I go from like a drop to a breakdown is that you can see here I have these mallets here. And here I added like a delay and some filter cutoff. And like this delay is just a delay free from FL Studio with a lot of feedback, and it just makes it blend well together with the breakdown section. And then of course I have like this piano, which I added here in the last part of drop 1. If you just play everything. And because now the listener knows that, okay, something new is happening, and then I'm using these mellow sounds, like now I'm trying to build a bridge between the drop and the breakdown section. And that's a really great way to introduce like elements. You can do this like as I did, or you can just have like a low pass filter or like a volume automation, slowly introducing stuff into the breakdown. You can see like this synth pass thing that I have here, like this stuttering thing. I take this out in the first part of the breakdown just to make this contrasting thing. And of course also taking out the bass, because I don't want that to dominate the breakdown, because the bass is like really like, it just repeats in the drop. And if I were to also use it in the breakdown, it would become a little bit repetitive, and the next drop will not sound that like awesome, in my opinion. So it's a matter of like saving firepower for your drops, saving those like really great elements, like those main elements. Try to save them for your drops. Don't overuse them in your composition. If you want to use them, you definitely, in my opinion, need to do some changes over time. It could be adding new notes, it could be adding some automation, and just to make the sound change over time, to make it more interesting for the listener to hear it. Because we can really quickly hear like if something is like just a loop playing the same thing as is all the way through a track, it's gonna be a little bit boring. So that's why we need to add these like effects, like adding automation, changing stuff, switching it up a little bit. And also like here for the drop going into the breakdown, I also cut out the kick drum. And you can see here, like for the blue elements, all of the drums, also just removing everything. I actually added a new component, which I only use in the breakdown. And it's these like conga or bonga. I can't like distinguish the difference, but like this like cool little loop here, percussion loop. I added like a volume automation here, just to slowly introduce it. And then I'm using this like drum boss low pass filter, just slowly opening everything up. And then I have, like you can see here, like then I'm introducing this hi-hat. And then I'm using the kick drum with the only with the click. Here. And then like the kick drum is also adding some volume automation. So it's basically just to slowly introduce stuff in the breakdown towards like the build-up. You can basically hear that everything is slowly opening up. So we know like, okay, now stuff is beginning to pick up pace and driving towards that drop and the build-up. I also added like these vocal chops here, down here. It's these bits here. And it's also great because I could just use them in the breakdown throughout the whole breakdown, but for me, I needed that change. So it's more like now when you play this, the more quieter parts of the breakdown, then we go into this section with the vocal chops. Then it starts to like pick up the pace, and also I introduced this like no, it actually plays the whole way through like this starter pad thing. No, it was here. So I'm also introducing like this one, and then towards the build-up. So what I'm doing here is that down here with my drums, I added also delay free on the drum boss. So basically just adding a little bit of delay to the drums and also low passing them. So making this DJ effect. And then of course adding some effects like some sweeps and stuff. And then I added like one really weird sound in the build-up. A dog barking, but I think it sounded great, and it was just a way to add a little bit of like my identity to the sound. Like just a personal touch. So that's basically how I will do my like breakdowns and build-ups. It's all a matter of trying to build a journey for the listener towards something. That's how I picture it. So I don't want to have everything just playing at full power, because then you don't have like these contrasting bits in your song structure. So it's really important to have these like more quieter elements and quieter parts in your song, and then slowly builds them towards something. That's basically like how I work. And then of course like how the sounds turn out in the breakdown and build up and what kind of effects I use will change from project to project, but I still use the same approach, that I need to have something that builds towards something. So if I have a drop, then I need to build something down, and then I have to build something up again, and then I have a drop, and then, you know, like having some dynamic changes basically. So yeah, that's actually, let's just play from this breakdown into the build up and then play a little bit of the drop. And yeah, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Pretty awesome. Okay guys, that was it for this video. It was my approach of how I do my build-ups and my breakdowns in most of my songs, and I really hope you learned something from this video. Again, this is just my approach. You can do it in a different way, but I just hope I inspired you to do something and you learned a little bit of my approach. So if you liked the video, it means so much to me if you will smash that like button or even subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that small bell notification so you get all of notifications for the future videos in the channel. And if you want to support me even further, you can go and check out some of my sample packs and preset pack on my web shop. The link is in the description down below. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, don't forget to join the Discord server. It's also in the link is also in the description down below. So yeah, I really hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.